Welcome to Office Hours with Our Hometown. We've got on the call, as always, Teri and Tyler from Publisher Support. Welcome, both of you.
Hey, Matt. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Hey, Tyler, welcome. Great. Yeah, so really excited to start off the new year with you guys. We made huge progress in 2021. That's what this presentation is mainly going to be about. I think just to get back to our old structure of office hours a little bit here, let's just take a quick look at the newsletter. This week's main announcement was the 2022 educational series that we've just announced on digital marketing in 2022. I'm also kind of thinking about calling it digital marketing for newspapers, because digital marketing can mean a lot of things, but we are super focused on the newspapers, how they can get their brand out there, sell more subscriptions, and they do have unique tactics. This isn't just a general purpose digital marketing education course that you can get on YouTube or Coursera or something. This is super specialized based on 25 years of experience working with newspapers. And so we've already announced the first webinar. It was kind of announced on its own before we had the whole series put together, but this is going to be on SEO for newspapers, again, specifically driving traffic from Google to newspaper websites. You can register completely free if you're an Our Hometown customer or if you're a member of any of these state associations. And it's only been about a few days that we've been promoting this. We've already got 50 registrations. So really happy about this. It's probably one of the best registrations that we've had for any webinar. So we'll see who comes. But, even if you register and you can't come, you'll still get the video recording. So please register if you're just interested in the topic. You don't need to be there live. But if you can be there live, it's always better so you can ask questions. But this is part of a series, as I said, of educational webinars. These are not talking about Our Hometown's latest products and innovations, although we do have separate webinars on those. This is purely educational. We're bringing in industry experts. Michael Katam will be the presenter for the SEO webinar, and he is a guy that we consult with for SEO. He's helped us improve the SEO of ourhometown.com and our customer sites. He's a world-renowned expert in SEO. So he's going to be giving that talk. And then we'll be getting into social media marketing for local newspapers in April. We're going to be doing these quarterly. And then website analytics, just how to use your analytics to design new products and content. And then finally, talking about taking social media marketing to the next level with paid advertising, how you can, with very little money, and get a lot more exposure for your posts. You can do it geo-targeted, so it's to people actually in your community. And we'll get into that in a whole lot more detail. This is something, again, we've opened up to the whole industry, but of course, Our Hometown customers are attending free. It is $25 if you're not in one of these associations or an Our Hometown customer for each webinar. That's the main announcement this week. And now the main event for today's webinar is going to be a look back at Our Hometown in 2021. So this is something I really enjoy doing. Teri, we did this last year again and got a lot of attention on social media. Really, people, I think, appreciated seeing the big picture, seeing everything kind of all at once. So this is just a timeline that Jack has put together to us, a really neat feature of WordPress. You can present these posts on this timeline. So let's just visually go down through all 30 posts that we're going to highlight, and it's going to be a rapid fire. So the first announcement of the year, almost exactly a year ago, was social media auto post. And actually, we had just stumbled upon this plugin and we got it working, and it simply took posts from WordPress and put them on social media. So that's what this announcement was. But we've since turned this into much more than just a plugin that you can put on your site. It's a whole service, really. There's actually now 2 plugins that you can use, one of 2, and they both serve different functions. They both send out the articles at a slightly different frequency. So no matter what kind of setup you have at your newsroom or how you want the articles put out, we can address that with the social media auto post feature. And we're going to help you get set up. We'll help you troubleshoot anything along the way. It's really pretty easy to set it up. It's just a couple steps, and we've got videos on that, but we're happy to jump on and walk you through it and just get a test post out there. But this is like one of probably three of the big things that we really focused on this year. It's just the basic stuff. This is first principles. We need to get people to the website. We need to increase traffic to newspaper websites. And actually, in Today in News Tech, we'll talk a little bit about how in 2021, there was an industry-wide drop in traffic compared to 2020. Of course, what goes up must come down. That's what that really is. We had a huge lift in 2020, and now it's just kind of returning to normal, but I do think it's probably higher than 2019. The point is, people are not as attached to the news as they were in 2020. They're not as glued to their phones on the latest in their communities, specifically about COVID. And I've also heard talks about how Trump not being in the news anymore has cut down on traffic, things like that. But the point is, we got to own this, and we can solve this problem. We can plug into social media and get that traffic directly. So that's what the auto post feature is about. We got a couple other announcements on this. This is a feature, the custom member press export. This was requested, and we basically just custom built it for a publisher, and now it's available for anyone. It allows you to do an export that only has the fields that you need for your print subscription system. So I'm talking about exporting from MemberPress the print subscribers so that you can get it into your print circulation system, which could be Interlink or NewsCycle or whatever you use. They all have requirements for importing the data and what fields they're going to take in the CSV. So this allows you to just export the fields that you want. And the idea is that you should just be able to export the CSV, not edit it at all, and just upload it right to the print circulation software. I'm actually reaching out to several publishers that have told us that they're using things like Interlink for managing print circulation. And I want to just come up with some tutorials on this whole process, like a step-by-step, because this blog post is pretty much laying out the export, but the other half is, of course, importing it. And that's on third-party software. So we're going to dig into that a little bit more in the next few weeks. At the end of January, we had the first virtual conference of Vodcast recording with editor and publisher. This was one of three that we did last year. Really fun working with Mike and everyone at E&P. He did a great job getting our name out there and getting a lot of people to attend the webinars. This was one of the ones where we had publishers on as case studies. And I think these are the most interesting. I certainly get the most out of them. And I think other publishers do too. They want to hear from people like them, not necessarily directly from me. So whenever possible, we want to do this. We, of course, have wonderful relationship with Kristen Weaver at Wilson County News and Guy Rogenson of Signals. And they were both happy to jump on and talk about how they were using automation to increase audience and revenue. Now, that's a pretty broad title. Specifically, this was really focused on audio articles. It was using automation to create audio content and increase time on site, increase traffic to the website, get your content out on new platforms like Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, things like that. Now, you can go back and look at this blog post and watch that whole video. Usually what we'll do with these webinars is record it and then put out a blog post in the next few days with the recording. So you can go back and check that out there. Start of March, we were just launching the Kevin Slimp webinar series. Can you even imagine what life was like, Teri, before we worked with Kevin Slimp? I mean, it just seems like that's been such a wonderful relationship.
I'm addicted.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you love those webinars. You go to basically everyone, don't you?
Everyone.
You and Vera. Okay, not basically, like
more than once I have.
Right. Well, that's great. I get a lot out of them, even though I'm not editing anything really in Photoshop anymore. I don't use Adobe products. Just watching Kevin present. I mean,
Yes.
What an amazing public speaker. I learned a lot from him in that way. But this was just the beginning of the webinar series. We scheduled 6. We're going to continue doing them monthly, but in March, we just laid out 6, and then we extended that series. So we're still doing these every month on tons of different topics on Adobe, mostly Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator, though. Also in March, creating a category-driven newsletter was a big focus. We had a lot of people just asking us, how do you go about this? How can I increase traffic to the website? I guess the lowest hanging fruit is to work with your existing audience and just try to get them to engage more. And you can do that with a category-driven newsletter, which means the newsletter only has stories from a single category. That's all. And then we can either have people sign up for that, or you could probably look at some of the data from your main newsletter and come up with a sub list of emails and just try to pitch them on this new separate thing. If those are people that always click on the sports stories and you're starting a sports newsletter, you could kind of seed things that way. But then also setting up a form on the site for people to just sign up for the newsletter is also key. And also, here's the thing, with Today in News Tech, I'm getting so much value out of it because Tyler and Chris and I are publishers. We're acting like publishers. We're using our own tools and seeing like what works, what doesn't, what could be better. And so we did this recently. We split off and created a whole new newsletter for Today in News Tech specifically. And we did exactly what I said. We seeded it with the most engaged customers. It was about 150, I think, that click on our newsletter almost every week, which is about half of our publishers. So we just took those emails and they're going to be the first to get this category-driven newsletter from our hometown. That was a really insightful development. Facebook News, again, just looking for low-hanging fruit. What's out there? Where are people already going? What platforms have the biggest audience? And that's definitely still Facebook. I think you could argue that the tide is turning for them, but at this moment, they're definitely the leader. They've got billions of monthly active users. So just getting your content on Facebook, there's ways to do it with social auto posts. You can do it manually, but getting in Facebook News specifically is very important. And that's a technical thing. It's not just something you start doing, and you can't just post on Facebook News. You need to set up a connection. I think it's through an RSS feed, and you need to actually apply. So that's something that we can definitely help with. We can give you guidance on. Ultimately, Facebook is the one doing those approvals, but we definitely can support you as much as we can on getting in there. And we do probably see the most traffic from all the social networks from Facebook. And I think that's largely because of the Facebook News vertical. This was a follow-up to our interview basically with ENP, where we talked with Wilson County News there, and she put together this whole page promotion for the podcast. I just put this out there as a blog post as just like best practice for how to market yourself as a newspaper, and specifically how to market new features on your website. So this was just really well done. I mean, it explained it at a level that anyone can understand, breaking it down to starting off with what is a podcast. You don't want to just start throwing these terms at your audience necessarily and assume they know what this means. And plus, everyone's got their own conceptions of what a podcast is. They picture an hour-long discussion. I think you kind of need to set the expectations. Audio articles are not really like a typical podcast. It's much more of a playlist, short form, quick audio file, a minute or two long. So I think they did a really nice job of explaining how the content's created here. And then they also just walk the audience through how you can use this feature. It's on the article level, it's on these podcast apps, and it's also on the embeddable player that goes on the homepage. Another update on newsletter. This is kind of just a technical one. CPT is a custom post type. And you're familiar with basic WordPress, you've got posts. And then what we've done is create many different types of custom post types, because newspapers are much more complicated than a blog. So it's not just posts. We don't just treat all the posts the same. We've got articles, we've got custom events. And so this newsletter plugin update allowed us to feed all that content into the newsletter. All right, so then May. This was just one of the many webinars that we did with NNA and different press associations, one of those recap videos, and it was on automated podcasting. I think I did this talk on either using automation to increase revenue or automating podcasting with audio articles, just a focus on automation. I probably did that talk 5 or 6 times, the exact same thing to different associations. And that's the big change this year. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but we're going to align all those press associations more into single events. And all those associations are going to be on one webinar, and they're all going to be part of the same thing. It's going to be much more efficient. Okay, so replay I did, with Illinois Press Association, I think that was. Okay, and then here we got the announcement in June. We partnered with the Virginia Press Association. This is the first of, I hope, many press associations that we'll partner with in this way. We work with many press associations as a sponsor and support their members that way. But with Virginia Press, they've launched what's called the Digital News Initiative. And that's basically our hometown. Okay. Just introducing their members to our hometown, because we've presented a fully turnkey business model for them, not just business model, but website production model. And we've launched several websites on the initiative already. So just really proud that we worked out that arrangement with VPA. We're also doing their website now, vpa.net. I just think that this is a great model. I think a lot of the press associations can do their own thing, maybe make a website themselves, or they hire a developer. But why not use a vendor in your industry? I just think we understand the needs of newspapers and press associations. I would just invite any press association that we're working with now or not working with to hit us up if you're interested in offering something to your members. And specifically, they were interested in the members that just had no digital presence, or their process just didn't involve updating the website practically ever. They just had fallen behind on digital and they need a jump start. And that's really what our hometown has always been known for, is just getting people online quickly and keeping that website up to date. Okay, a lot of press associations giving recognition to our customers. And so we were happy to see that the Uvalde News Leader won Best Website at the Texas Press Association. So we always like to point those out and just give credit where it's due. Then we've got another webinar. This was fun. I did a few of these webinars focused specifically on newsletter marketing. A lot of this is the preamble to what we're doing with webinars this year. I would say I started to see that this is what we got to do. We just got to teach people, focus on education. Don't talk about our hometown's newsletter specifically, although you can mention the solutions that we provide, but talk more about the basic principles of newsletter marketing and offer all the different tools. There's MailChimp, Constant Contact, whatever you want to use. It doesn't matter what you use as long as you're doing these things to get people to your website. Optimize mobile experience at our hometown. I think this was an article that we refreshed last July. It's something that we had written before, but we brought it back. I remember why. It was a setup to this webinar in July. The editor and publisher, our second webinar with ENP, apps and audio news for the growing mobile audience. The idea behind this whole webinar, and I think the reason people came, it wasn't so much about apps and audio. Those are just two ways of reaching the growing mobile audience. It's really about recognizing that our audience is mobile. 70 to 80% of our customers' audience is mobile. So they're checking the website from their phone. How can we better serve that mobile audience? And I believe it's with native apps, which get you the push notifications and are obviously right on the phone. And it's just more part of their experience than probably a responsive site. And then also audio. Audio is just a naturally mobile product. And it's growing all the time for that reason. You can be hands-free, you can be eyes-free and still get the information. And the other thing about audio that we realized through all of this promotion we did in the first 6-7 months of the year, we got a lot of attention for these audio articles, but it became very clear right away that since the articles are so short, they have to be presented in a playlist. We can't expect people to hit play over and over and remain engaged. That's how we got to this concept of the audio articles playlist, which we just started promoting in the UK this morning. It's very exciting. We had a newsletter go out from Press Gazette, so we'll see what kind of interest we have overseas. But the idea of the playlist is really to just keep people engaged, provide them with relevant content that's interesting to them, it's related to what they've already been listening to. Bottom line, just provide new ways of getting the news.
Also, it kind of tapped into the changes made by COVID, where people were trying to do things, more than one thing at a time, and at home taking care of kids, or sitting at business meetings and still want to hear the news kind of thing. So it gave people that outlet to be able to maintain their new habits, I guess is how you would put it.
That's right. Yeah. When we were watching these numbers in 2020, the listening audience for podcasts actually went up during the shutdown. And a lot of people thought it was going to go down because less commuting. But I think if you're already a podcast listener, whether you're in the car or not, you're going to turn into these shows. If you are in the car, that's probably the time that you're going to do it. But if you're not driving as much, then you would do it when your hands are occupied or whatever. I kind of have this idea for an ad for this, which is just inspired by my personal experience of using audio all the time. Just like when your hands are occupied by the kids, exactly like you said, like that's a common experience. And I think a common use case for audio.
Right. And your commute time became your indoor bike time or your outdoor hike time.
Sure, exactly. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the best use case for me is hiking. I got my whole playlist of podcasts and I'll get caught up, on my weekly hike up into the foothills. And we've spent a lot of time on the UI for this, really tried to think about what works out there and the products we like. I use Spotify constantly, and I know James, our engineer, does as well. So a lot of this was inspired by that. Certainly the playlist and just creating an endless list of playlists is the ultimate goal. And we're pretty close to that point already. You've got the category playlist, you've got a list of new articles. And then when you click on any story, even if you just click on an isolated story that's not in a category playlist, let's say I click on the newest story, the top one here, it's going to create a playlist based on that article, using the related stories technology. So in the same way that we recommend 3 stories at the bottom of every article, those are driven by the related stories machine learning, we can do the same thing with audio. All the information is there. A text article is tied to the audio. So that way we can also pull in the text into the playlists app. So you can either just listen, or if you want to look at the pictures and read along with the narrator, you can just basically hit this toggle. So if I'm on the playlist page, I can click article and it would flip over to this view, and then I could switch back to the playlist here. Okay, so a lot on that one. Let's jump back to our timeline. I sat down with Jared in preparation for one of the last E&P interviews, but we sat down and talked to him about his app and how things are going at Western Ag Reporter, which is a specialty newspaper focused on agriculture. And then we've got more updates on audio articles. This update was related to this idea of trying to bring people into the playlists at every opportunity we could. So on most sites now, we have a link to come into the playlist page at the top of the category, or you can click this and it will bring you into the playlist with this article at the top. And then it will, again, generate the playlist based on the who, what, where, when of this article. This was just a feature update that we recognized we needed right away after releasing playlists. Okay, more industry interviews with Guy Rodgensen, more award winners. Many of our customers are getting recognized by their state associations. Then we've got the manual push notifications. This was in response to Valley Center. He uses our app, and he was one of the first ones to get the app. We are all about automation kind of by default. So the push notifications were originally set up to just go out instantly. As soon as an article is published on the website, it goes onto the app, and then it sends the notification. He wanted more control over that. And so by all means, we made it possible. So he will now pick and choose specific stories to push out there. Personally, as a publisher myself with Today in News Tech, I think I would maybe prefer this a little bit more because we're not producing as much content. I think if we were putting out a lot more, I would want it to be automated. Okay, now we're getting into fall, the ad network. Launching that beta test, we got a few people on board. Now we've got quite a few more on the platform, and a good number of them are paying for their websites and profiting off of this. So they're covering all of our costs and making money on top of it.
This is so much fun for me. When I have to email a publisher and say, hey,
right.
You don't have an invoice due this month, and
right.
we actually have a surplus, so we need your bank information.
Right.
That's a lot of fun.
I'm sure that's the kind of email that they love to get. Yeah. Years ago, I remember very specifically being at the National Newspaper Association, and some of the publishers there that were with other vendors telling me that they're making money off of their website. The company was paying them. I didn't quite see how that would work, but I think what you really need to do is have some kind of premium ad network. You can't just rely on Google AdSense alone. It's just not going to be enough. You need multiple ad networks competing for those positions, which is what we have here. Along with social media auto posts, those two features I think are just a killer combo. You're driving traffic with the auto poster, and then you're monetizing each visitor with the ad network. Vera, you've been working on this so much. Do you have anything yet you wanted to add on the status of this project rollout?
I have seen a lot of positive reactions from the publishers. Not only is it helping post and keeping the post relevant in the community on the platforms,
right,
but they're getting the revenue. And I actually have two publishers who reached out to us about reinvesting to do apps.
Right.
That's right. So cool.
Yes.
Taking that revenue that you could put back into your company and get
right.
even more of a positive response.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What a great feeling to have them reinvest in us, and we can bring this revenue to them and then help them grow their digital presence and improve their products. So those are some really exciting, heartwarming stories that we like to see. So yeah, this is kind of what I'm talking about, like first principle stuff. What's the lowest hanging fruit in terms of ad revenue or in terms of tactics for getting people to the site? Let's just check all those boxes. Be really thorough about it. So that's what this is all about, getting the word out to our customers. We say some of the same things a lot. We're pitching the ad network constantly, but that's just because we really want you all to consider it. September, we hit the end of the Kevin Slimp webinar series, and there was no question in my mind that we were going to extend it. I mean, it basically indefinitely, as far as I'm concerned. I love being associated with Kevin. I feel like we're kind of, friends in a way. I've only met him in person once, but the start of that whole series, I'll just tell you this little personal story. We were going back and forth, and it wasn't really becoming clear like what I was looking for. And because he has this whole other business where he does this on his own, and I want to just pay for my customers. But then one morning he called me, and it was actually the morning after my son was born. And I was so out of it, but I answered the phone for some reason because I thought, oh, it's Kevin. And he was just like, you sound really tired right now. And I told him what had happened. And we just like instantly bonded over that. It was really nice. Told me a little bit about his family right away. And that has been the tone ever since. Every time he invites me on his webinar to give a plug for our hometown, he's super sweet and just really supportive of our company. And I think what he sees, he doesn't actually see our websites, necessarily, or the back end of it or anything. I don't think he knows our product to the point where he would really sell that, but what he knows is our customers. He interacts with our customers every month. And every month after his webinar, he tells me, oh my gosh, so many wonderful questions from your customers and so many good things to say about you and our hometown. They all have nothing but good things to say. That speaks louder than anything I could say, just like what our customers are saying for us. And that's always great to hear. So we're going to continue working with him. We've got another 3 or 4 webinars scheduled this year, and then we're going to just keep that rolling. Okay, then website security refresher. This was just a response to a lot of issues. You just hear about these things in the news all the time, sites getting hacked, people's information getting stolen. So, we just put together a list of steps you can take to prevent this. I've heard the analogy of security just in general is like lining up Swiss cheese, a bunch of slices of Swiss cheese so that nothing can pass straight through. So like there's holes in every layer. But if you can just layer enough, then people won't be able to get through. So these are just, no one thing is going to make you 100% secure is what I'm saying. It's all just about relative security. So the more these things you can do, the better. I won't go through them right now, but I think this was a very valuable article. Okay, coming into the home stretch here, 25 years of automated digital publishing for newspapers. This was our last webinar of the year, and I just kind of went back through the history of the company, kind of like what we're doing today, but looking at all 25 years, where we came from and where we're going. That was a fun one. I interviewed the founder, my father, Steve Larson, for that. Just heard it directly from him, stories that I've heard dozens of times, of course, but like how he came up with the extraction process and why he saw it as needed 25 years ago. And really how that has been our bread and butter for 25 years. I mean, that has carried the company. We continue to innovate and we're branching out into other things, of course, but that's the essential thing, is getting the content on the website, because without that, we can't make the audio articles and all the other things we do. So we're just all about making it easier for publishers. More press associations. We were sponsoring the New England Press Association in October. Let's see, this was a specific customer request on getting events in the newsletter. So this was taking it beyond the custom post type, and we developed the custom events block for, I think that was for Red Hook down in New York. She's very focused on the events getting in her newsletter, which I think she's a great case study. I mean, she probably does a better job with that newsletter than I've ever seen, because she's digital only and she can really kind of focus on that. Reviving newspapers and digital news deserts. In retrospect, I think that name was a little bit too dramatic. Really, all this was about was just increasing traffic to your sites and using social media to do that, and just going wherever the audience is and bringing them back to the website. The name really came from the experience that we had with the Indiana papers, where they had zero digital presence outside of Facebook, but their presence on Facebook was so strong. They had 20,000 followers there, that we were able to turn what was a news desert into a flourishing tropical rainforest. Because, I mean, we immediately directed a large fraction of that traffic. Of course, we can't get 100% of those followers to come to the website. Who knows what Facebook is showing them? But just getting it on that page, if they are an active follower of that page and they're liking things on it and commenting, then they are going to see these links to the website in their news feed. And so rather than just staying on Facebook and engaging with the newspaper brand on Facebook through the Facebook page, we're getting them to the website and actually developing a direct relationship with them. Okay. Then we had a really nice editorial from Kevin Slimp. Again, just talking about why he joined forces with our hometown. I think in here he talks a lot about what the goals were of his webinar series. We're not trying to make money here. We're not going to be reselling tickets. We just want to pay for all of our customers' tickets. Anyone that wants to go, we want to cover the $70 to $100 fee. So that was really nice of him. He's going to keep writing things like that for us this year. Okay, then the last two posts, we already talked about SEO for newspapers. That's going to be in a couple of weeks. And then Tyler put together this great summary on the state of audio news in 2022, where we are at after a year of growth and more focus on automation. What's going on? Are people making money off of this? That kind of thing. And a lot of this is referencing coverage we've done on Today in News Tech. We got through it. So we're now into 2022.